Welcome back everybody, my name is Tucker, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about some NBA fan bases that already, just a week or so into the season, are panicking about how their team looks so far. And it seems like we do this every single year, right? There's teams that look really good or really bad in the first couple of games, and sometimes we overreact, and other times that's exactly what that team looks like for the rest of the season. But the reason that these specific teams make this video and are on this list are because all of the concerns and fears that their fan base had about them as a team, which every team has coming into a new season, all of those things have come true at least 2 or 3 games into the year so far. And starting off the list here is the Chicago Bulls, who are currently sitting at a 1-2 record. They lost to the Hornets by a point on opening night. They went on the road and beat a solid but young Grizzlies team, and then just got absolutely pummeled by the Toronto Raptors and only put up 84 points in their most recent game. And the biggest issue for them right now is they just can't make shots. They're 28th in the league in effective field goal percentage and 3-point percentage, and they're 22nd in the league in points per game. And that's a big concern for them because coming into the season, this was a team that might have had some struggles defensively, at least that was the expectation, but they were supposed to be able to score the ball with guys like Lauri Markkanen, who had an awesome first game and hasn't been very good since. Guys like Zach LaVine, Otto Porter, they were supposed to have enough guys that could get in the paint, make plays, make shots. They had 2 good bigs and Wendell Carter Jr. and Lauri Markkanen, and all of those things were supposed to come together to a team that's going to be a really good, exciting offensive team, even if they were going to have their struggles defensively. And for a fan base that I know, just based off looking at Twitter and talking to Bulls fans, had realistic, legit playoff hopes for this upcoming season, this is definitely not an ideal start for them, and some fans are already turning on head coach Jim Boylen. And like I said, it's not the worst start in the world. They did go and beat a really good Grizzlies team, but that opening night loss to the Hornets is just such a deflating thing, coming into a season being really excited. Lowry played awesome, and then you still end up losing to what I think is the worst team in the league in Charlotte. But that Hornets loss, even though it was certainly bad, is a little bit forgivable because the Hornets made 23 threes. PJ Washington had 7 by himself, and you can probably write that one off as just a little bit of a fluky loss, which certainly happens to teams throughout the year in an 82-game season. And if they win that one, they're sitting at 2-1, and the start doesn't look nearly as bad. And on top of that, their best rookie, Kobe White, has looked fantastic to start the season, is currently 3rd on the team in scoring, coming off the bench, providing them a nice scoring punch, and is 4th in the entire league among rookies in points per game as well. And so even though, like I said, that Hornets loss looks bad and the Toronto thing was just an absolute abomination from a scoring standpoint, only putting up 84 points in the modern NBA is just ridiculous. But they do have the Knicks and Cavs coming up in the next couple of games, and that could certainly provide them an opportunity to right the ship and take away some of the panic from their fan base. But if they lose both or even just one of those games, panic could reach an all-time high with what looked to be a promising Bulls team coming into this season. Moving on now to one of the teams that was the most obvious selection for this video, and it's the Golden State Warriors. They're 0-2 to begin the season with a 23.5 point per game margin of defeat through those 2 games. And to this point, the lack of offense is really concerning. D'Lo hasn't looked comfortable at all and is only averaging around 13 points per game. And this team's 3rd leading scorer right now is Eric Pascal. And this was a big topic throughout the offseason going into this year for the Warriors, was without Klay Thompson on the floor, and obviously with Kevin Durant leaving as well, was this team going to be able to score enough points without those guys to stay afloat in the Western Conference? And even though some of those numbers are deflated in terms of their best players, their starters scoring numbers being down because they're not playing as many minutes because they're getting absolutely pummeled in the beginning of games, but still, it's really concerning how much they're struggling to score the ball. But circling back to that point that I made in the beginning of the video about a fan base's worst fears being realized, that's exactly what's happening with the Warriors. They can't score the ball, as I just talked about, and they've been really bad defensively as well, with the worst defensive rating in the entire league. And the worst part about all of this is it seems like this is legitimately bad. This doesn't seem fluky at all. It doesn't really seem like it's something where they're going to end up figuring it out and getting better, because from a personnel standpoint, pretty much everybody that's going to be healthy and play for this team is healthy right now, and the numbers, even a small sample size, look legit right now in terms of how bad they are. Because the first thing that I did when I saw that this team had the worst defensive rating in the league was go and look at their turnover numbers, because traditionally in the Steve Kerr era, this is a team that's turned the ball over a lot, and if they were doing that and they were giving up a lot of easy points in transition, maybe that would explain why the defensive numbers are so bad. But then I looked, and they're actually 2nd best in the league in terms of turnovers per game, so they're just really bad on defense regardless of the turnover numbers. Now, to be fair, the early season schedule has been difficult. They lost in their first game to a Clippers team that looks like a legitimate championship contender, and then lost on the road to a Thunder team that looks like it's going to be better than a lot of people thought they would be. And on top of that, they've got winnable games coming up against the Pelicans and the Suns to potentially eventually right the ship. But just like the Bulls, if they start losing those kinds of games, then things are going to get really concerning really quickly. For me personally, I'm not too worried because I do still believe in the championship pedigree of the players on the roster. I still think Steve Kerr is a good coach. I think D'Angelo Russell is going to get more comfortable. They're going to figure out the offense stuff. The defense really concerns me, but I'm not sure that this is a case of them just not being very good. It's just it might take so long for them to figure it out that they might already be way out of the Western Conference playoff race by the time that happens because this conference is so good. Moving on now to the third team on the list, and it's the Sacramento Kings. And this one by far bums me out the most out of any of the other teams that we're going to talk about in this video because I was high on the Kings. I thought they were going to be really good this season, and after being such an exciting young team last year, they've just looked completely lifeless to start this season. And as I mentioned in their season preview video, one of the bigger concerns coming into the season was the coaching change when they had finally turned some things around and they bring in a new head coach in Luke Walton, and to this point, it's been nothing short of a disaster from a coaching standpoint for the Kings. It doesn't seem like they're really that energetic or excited to play any of the games. They don't really have a clear identity or scheme. They can't get out on the fast break like they did last year, and a lot of the rotation issues that plagued Walton in Los Angeles have followed him to Sacramento, and he just can't figure out a way to stagger the minutes to get the Kings' best players on the floor all at the same time or one by one throughout the game. This is a Kings team that got destroyed by the Suns on opening night, then they lost to the Trailblazers at home, and now they just scored 81 points in a game against the Utah Jazz in their third loss of the year with an average margin of defeat through those 3 games of 23.6 points. And now they've got the Nuggets up next, and they're probably staring an 0-4 start right in the face. And that's just about as disastrous of a start as the Kings could possibly have to begin this year. And pretty much everything has been bad for them to this point. They've only broken the 100-point mark once. They've given up 113 points at least in every single game, and they've got the worst offensive rating in the league and the 3rd worst defensive rating across the entire NBA. And it really seems like Buddy Hield is the only offensive player in any kind of a rhythm right now, and those big, expensive offseason additions from a veteran standpoint that they brought in this summer haven't looked to pan out at all. But the only thing that I can really say to try and make Kings fans feel better is, of course, that Marvin Bagley has only played in 1 game so far, and he's a huge part of their team, and this is such a small sample size that maybe they'll be able to figure it out and turn it around. But Bagley's going to miss the next couple of weeks, so they're not going to see him anytime soon, and things have been so bad and so concerning that I'm not really sure that the sample size thing just wishes away all of these issues. So I am very concerned, and if I was a Kings fan, I would honestly definitely be panicking about their start to the year. Moving on now, let's talk about the Indiana Pacers, and more so than any other team on this list, the reason they're here has to do with who they've lost to. They lost to the Pistons in their first game, and then lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers in their second game to get off to an 0-2 start. And they have issues on both sides of the ball as one of the worst teams in the league at both 3-point attempts and makes, and 25th best in the league in terms of defensive rating. Now on the bright side, Brogdon, Turner, and Sabonis have looked really good offensively, but they haven't really gotten a ton of contributions from anybody outside of those 3. Most specifically, TJ Warren and Jeremy Lamb have struggled to this point, and until Victor Oladipo comes back, they need those guys to provide them some more offense in addition to better shooting from Doug McDermott. But the thing that would make me most concerned about this team to this point is their defense, because they're not really going to be getting any more help from a defensive standpoint in terms of personnel until Oladipo comes back. And when you look at their roster, they really don't have a ton of good defensive players. So if they don't turn that around, that could certainly be an issue. But I'm really not too concerned about them. They didn't lose to awful teams. They did lose to the Pistons, and they're actually a pretty good team. And then the Cavs loss, again, you could probably write that off as just a fluky thing. That kind of stuff happens. Oladipo will come back, and it's not a situation where they're going to fall so far out of the playoff race that by the time Oladipo comes back, they're not going to be a playoff team. It's still a weak Eastern Conference. They're going to be fine once Oladipo comes back, but through their first couple of games, you'd like to see them play better against the pretty weak competition that they've seen to this point. And then last up, I'm putting this team on the list just because I had a lot of people pointing them out to me on Twitter, and it's the New York Knicks. And I'm really not sure why people think that they should be panicking about the Knicks, because I'm not sure who thought that they were really going to be all that good in the first place. A lot of the tweets were about Fizdale, and I guess people don't think that he's doing a very good job as head coach, but the only thing that really matters to me, or would matter to me if I was a Knicks fan, is how RJ Barrett's playing, and he's actually playing pretty well to really well to start this season. Some of the other younger guys are having issues. Dennis Smith Jr. does not look good at all, but if you're just looking at like a promising future type deal, which is what this season should have been about out for the Knicks in general. RJ Barrett looks good, so I did want to mention them because a lot of people said that they're panicking or they should be panicking on Twitter, but I don't really see it just because my expectations for them were already so low. But there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.